Africa.
Tech.
Innovation.
The future of business.
Welcome everyone to our very first Inside the C-Suite series. The goal here is to showcase how successful CEOs have built great companies in East Africa and their journey to success. Today, we are privileged to host Chris Getonga, the founder and managing director of Mimosa Pharmacy, and Josh Ruxin, the co-founder and executive chairman of Goodlife Pharmacy. Goodlife Pharmacy acquired Mimosa chain of pharmacies. So I think I'm just going to jump into it. Chris, so you wanted to become a doctor, but ended up at Syracuse University. So how did that happen? Studying business and finance and accounting from being, a medical doctor. So just tell us more about how that happened.
Well, okay, I didn't become a medical doctor. I wanted to, and I guess in my days, depending on your A-levels, they would then decide, on your O-levels, decide what sort of subjects you do for your A-levels. So I was in school called St. Mary's. I did quite well in my sciences, so I was going to do maths, chemistry, bio. And my mother asked, why are you doing that? I said, I want to be a doctor. She was a nurse. And she just literally, I think, cried and said, please, Chris, the doctors have no life. I know your character. You'll not be happy. Please do anything else. Become an accountant, whatever. So basically, I said, okay, let me just do it. So I did my first degree in the States, came back to Kenya, and then joined a company, a big, rather large African auditing firm as a break called Getonga and Company, and then got a scholarship to go to England to do my chartered accountancy. But I always had medicine in the back of my brain. My mom was a nurse for many years in the government. Did 2 years of my chartered accountancy, knew it was never really for me. Came back here, my father had been bit unwell, and the bills were crazy. My mother had to actually sell a house to pay his bill. And I said, something here is not right. She then had a pharmacy that she had started in downtown Nairobi, a place called Atema, 1977. And I sort of jumped in and said, okay, let me help you professionalize this little shop. And I then started a laboratory. And soon after the laboratory, a very good friend of mine sort of came up and said, Chris, I've been diagnosed with HIV. And he was very, very scared. And in those days, it was like a death sentence. So he sat with me and said, what do? I said, let's go talk to your mother and move on to the next stage. And suddenly at that point, the treatment, I think, available in Kenya was like AZT and maybe 3TC, was over $1,000. Soon after that, another lady I knew came up to me and they knew me in this medical field and told me, Chris, I've also been, when they're going for their insurance policies. So I said, something here is not right. I said, I had my father, I had a good friend of mine whose father had cancer. So I said, let me start a medical center that can be all-inclusive, maybe a chronic care center, which deals with chronic illnesses, diabetes, HIV, cardiac, renal, things like that. And that was actually my dream. So I did formulate this idea, and I started a company called Acacia Medical Center in 1998. And I would say, like, we're talking about venture capitalism and seed money and all. I actually went to a very good family friend of mine who had never done it. But his father had, in the last 1 year, passed away of cancer. I went to him and I said, I have this idea. And they thought, wow, Chris, that's a really noble idea. So they said, okay, just hone in your business idea. And next thing I knew, they'd given me a check in 1998 of 60 million shillings. Yeah, and I had 2 million shillings. Yeah? And they just trusted me, and I built Acacia Medical Center, a state-of-the-art, I think, medical center of its time, its class, and very quickly you're able to build the place because you have the money. And then suddenly you build the place. You've gone and seen all the top doctors here in all the various fields. I don't want to say name, but it's the Wheelies, the Test Valdez, the first people. So you build the place and said, oh, I have built the place. Come and see it. 14 rooms, pharmacy, laboratory, imaging. And they say, oh, Chris, I can't come now. I said, why? Because they said, anyone coming inside here, they're going to say is chronically ill. So quickly, you have to reinvent yourself, put a sign outside the building saying fully furnished offices to let with a computer screen, everything. And then we had the story of the American bombing. Yeah, and then we had the American bombing here. The medical fraternity had a building called Afia House, which was just down the road. That was also affected. I'd seen those doctors. Next thing I knew, doctors are calling me and saying, Chris, you still have offices. And we just picked up. And I did a lot of work for IOM, which is the screening now for the medical refugees going to various countries. But I would say my growth became my bane, because as you start growing 20-30% per year when you're dealing with insurance people, and insurance people trying to find every way not to pay you, I became a debt collector. Yeah? So I would wake up every morning and how much am I owed, how much do I owe, and you're just going out, and I just said, this thing can't work. So eventually I gave up that business to a group of doctors who felt they could then take that to the next level. And I said, let me start Mimosa Pharmacy, which is just a purely cash business. And I started with the first one at the Junction, then got one at Westgate, then Ridgeways, and grew to about, I think, 8 or 9. And it was doing quite well. We were seeing about 1,000 people a day. But of course, as you're growing, Knight Frank, which are very close to me, you're getting malls coming up, and you became sort of the name that people wanted to be there. And I'm like, yeah, I'm signing up, not knowing I'm going to find the money to build it. I said, I'll deal with it when I get there. And then you have your suppliers, who suddenly became my finances, because suddenly you have a new shop coming up. You said, listen, I know I'm like 2 months behind. I need another 20 million, 30 million to build the next shop. So it's going to be a bit slow, but you have all this medicine sitting on your store shelf. Unless I take the risk in building the shop, how are you going to sell your medicine? So we became partners in this journey, so to speak. And I was sort of happy, plodding along. Thought I'd get to like 14, 17 stores.
Clearly, Chris is very passionate and wants to really tell his story. And so I have to give Josh a chance to speak and say something. So Josh is a graduate from Yale University, went to Columbia University, holds a PhD from University College of London. Yet, Josh is building health and wealth in Africa. Particularly, he has a strong affiliation for East Africa. So Josh, why is that?
Before I talk about why, I do want to point out that the way this has all gone tonight, with the cocktails happening before speaking, really puts the speakers at a serious disadvantage. So I can't be held responsible for self-censoring. Well, I just very quickly, I fell in love with East Africa as a teenager. I was 17 during my first journey, actually, to Kenya and to Ethiopia, and decided very naively at the time, I want to have impact, I want to make a difference. And then I spent most of the next 30 years trying to figure out how to do that. And I'm not sure I've got it all figured out just yet, but for a couple decades worked in public health, management consulting, and about 4 years ago was inspired actually by my wife, who had started the top restaurant and boutique hotel in Rwanda called Heaven. You can check it out, www.heavenrwanda.com. I know some of you are going to Rwanda soon, and I know some of you need a nice, tranquil place to go visit during this coming month. So just have to upsell. Always be selling. Always be selling. So 4 years ago, I was watching what she was doing and the impact she was having by creating employment and changing lives in a sustainable way, better than any aid project. And I had grown really tired of going out begging for philanthropic funding. And I got together with a couple partners, Dave Zapel and Jeff McCormick, and we put our heads together. And we sort of ran our hands over East Africa, again, very naively, and we said, what's wrong here? And how could you have the greatest public impact through the private sector? And one of the first things that we noted was that over a third of all pharma sold in East Africa is counterfeit or substandard. Well, why is that? Well, why don't people just go to CVS or Walgreens or Boots? Oh, there is no CVS, Walgreens, or Boots. Well, what is there? Oh, there's Mimosa Pharmacy. And that's how I met Chris Getonga. And I remember the first couple times I sat down with Chris, we started to flesh out this insane ambition. You must have thought I was crazy. He always jokes that I showed up at his office, dressed pretty casually with a backpack on. He thought that was really funny that I'd have a backpack for a serious business meeting. I still have the same backpack. And I said, Chris, we've got to figure out how to take what you've created to the next level. We've got to figure out how to get this to everyone in East Africa. But it's going to take a lot of private equity. Turns out it was going to take a lot more private equity than I ever could have imagined at the time. And it's interesting. I think Chris was about to tell one version of the story, but I'm going to tell you the truth. So in August 2013, we had a term sheet all prepared, and we, the founders, were going to take the majority stake of Mimosa, and we were going to create this new company called Goodlife. And the three partners, we were bankrolling this, and we were also going to bring in some other private equity. And I remember getting on the phone with Chris, and he said, Josh, I've thought this over, and I just can't part with the majority. Do you remember this? And I just, my heart stopped. And I thought, this is one of those moments in life where, okay, there are a lot of things you might want to scream. But I care about Chris, and I really like him. And I said, Chris, I understand where you're coming from. I understand how much you value what you've created. And if you ever change your mind, give me a call. And so the founders and I, we went back to the drawing board, and we realized we didn't really have a really good plan B. Rarely do you ever have a great plan B. And as we were waiting on all this, the Westgate attack happened. And I think several weeks later, Chris reached out to me and said, Josh, I've thought about this, and I've thought about the vision that you guys have for creating something that's going to impact people's health. And if you guys can figure out how to bring it to scale, wouldn't it be amazing that out of something so terrible, out of one of the worst events in East African history, if we together could create a company that does more good for the people of East Africa? And that's how Goodlife was born.
Josh, thank you for that. I hold you there. And there's a third person to this, puzzle, who happens to be Winnie. So I met Josh some time back in 2013. So this is how this story comes together. And, he had this wonderful proposal of Goodlife. And he came to me that time. I was working at a private equity firm. And he put together this amazing idea. And, I sat across the other side of the table. And, I called them one day and said, unfortunately, the investment committee turned down my proposal. So fast forward to today. And, Chris and Josh made this work. So how was the marriage? Since Winnie turned them down at that point in time, they found another investor. So Chris, how was that?
I won't talk about the investor side of it because Josh found the investor. I'll talk about what made me go with Josh and David Zappo. A large part of it for me is gut. You feel this is the right person. At the time, there were actually 3 other funds looking at Mimosa. And not because I would say we're a big thing. We had a lot of presence. So we'd see 1,000 people a day. So I guess when people come to Nairobi, where do you shop medicine? They would say Mimosa, Mimosa. As people came to me, they said, you only have like 9 shops? But everyone I talk to goes to your shops. But it was creating high standards, integrity, loving your staff having ownership. So I think that's what it was. So when I met Josh and David Zappo, I had a connection with him, literally as a person. And of course, now when you start bringing the people who try to put the deal together, what do you call it? Egos start coming up. And yeah. And I must tell you something really, really funny. Yesterday morning, so I'm not very big on social media and Facebook and all LinkedIn, but I'm on it. And David Zappo came up as, he's now become your friend. Now David Zappo is Josh's partner. Very nice guy, a quiet guy. He's definitely very intelligent. And of course, I'm reading his thing. So David Zappo did his first degree at MIT. Then he went to Stanford. Then he went to Columbia for his PhD. I was dealing with sharp guys. Trust me, at the time. I knew it, but they were very humble people. There was a time I think the deal nearly collapsed. And their chairman at the time, David McCormick, Jeff McCormick was in New York. I was flying to New York for a little holiday with my family. And he said, Jeff called me and said, listen, I need to meet you for breakfast in New York. He came down from Boston. He said, I'm a strong Catholic. My daughter, we're going to Ireland. I think she's going to sing in some church there. I'm going to run as the independent governor of Massachusetts, but I like these 2 young men. I've never been to Kenya, never been to Rwanda, but I just like what they're telling me. They're saying, you are the guy. So he said, if you own the business and we want to buy the business, it's only us we're talking to. Forget about the rest. Trust me. And I said, okay. I called Nairobi and said, just make it happen. That was really it.
So it was quite a journey. So it was Catalyst Partners that actually had the faith in us initially to put this together, because if you think about what our proposal was, at the time that we were drawing up the papers, we didn't have a pharmacy, we didn't have a brand, we didn't have a reputation. All we had was a business plan. And with that business plan, we raised several $1 million, and our first branded store was in Naivasha, March 2015. We had a terrific founding management team that had worked in Boots in the UK, in Holland, and in Thailand, because frankly, I didn't know the pharmacy business, though both of my grandfathers, interestingly, had pharmacies in the US back in the early days. And Catalyst really got us on our feet, and we got moving, and we started growing, and we started building our name brand and fitting out pharmacy after pharmacy. We started acquiring other pharmacies and rebranding them under our name. And then we started doing deals with Shell, Vivo, and Total. We realized that sometimes you can't find the square footage on site, so we actually started the first prefabricated pharmacies, which you can see dotting the landscape in outer Nairobi these days. And unbelievably, after just about 22 months, Catalyst exited and did well, and Leapfrog Investments came in as our new partners, and we felt incredible alignment with these guys because their whole motto is profit with purpose, and that was exactly why we created Goodlife.
So profit with purpose. And today we've created a chain of Goodlife, not only in Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania, but
No, not Tanzania yet.
coming soon. So
She's pushing me.
yes, pushing hard. I believe in you, Josh. And so there's been so many challenges, that entrepreneurs will face when working with private equity investors. They need to be ready to, be torn apart, have your business being questioned, what skin in the game do you have? I'd be keen to know, what was your experience, at the beginning, first with the first investor and then the exit, up to the point at which Leapfrog came on board. So it's interesting just to share with entrepreneurs who are in the room and those who are looking to actually have their businesses attract, investment capital from private equity and venture capital. And it would be nice to just hear your, experience with working with, these types of investors.
I wish I could say it's easy, but I think this is a pretty savvy crowd, and that would be rather inaccurate. I think the biggest problem, of course, is between founders, and we are founders, and Chris is as much a shareholder and stakeholder in Goodlife as I am, and private equity, is that you have different goals. And obviously, private equity is led by their limited partners' investment goals and the returns that they want to achieve. And founders and often management have vision, but ultimately aren't just doing it for money. And sometimes you can find that common ground, but more often than not, it's very difficult to locate that area. And that's where problems can occur. We're in a very challenging time, as everybody in this audience is aware right now, in the retail marketplace right here in Kenya, because of forces and changes and challenges that were beyond anyone's ability to predict or anticipate. But investors are never happy with changing territory and changing expectations. And so it's just never going to be easy. I think I learned from my wife that being your own boss and figuring out some way to bootstrap it all on your own as long as you possibly can, put as much skin in the game, whatever it takes, is probably the best way to go to create the highest equity. She's building an incredible new eco lodge resort hotel, and she financed it by getting family members to tap their home equity lines. because taking private equity and private capital she felt would be overly challenging and limit her steps forward towards realizing her vision. And I think this was something that Chris was really up against too, as he was taking a look at what it would mean, right? Because you had the opportunity to take equity, but you still had to run the show. And it was all that pressure was still going to be on your shoulders, right? And so figuring out how to thread the needle is incredibly tough. I don't think that anyone's come up with a solution to it, but let's face it, a lot of the world's greatest companies have been able to grow through private equity, so they must do something right.
They sure do. Chris, tell us. You're a Kenyan entrepreneur, going about your day-to-day businesses. People hold on so dearly to this business and they're like, this is my baby, I've built it, I'm not ready at all to share. And you're seeing these share purchase agreements, shareholder agreements, amendment of, memorandum and articles of association. You're seeing all this huge legal documentation. And, how did that feel? What was that experience?
Well, Winnie, I must say I learned a lot of new words during that 1 year. It was absolutely amazing. I would sit there quietly. I had somebody who was doing my thing for me and just hear, let's string along this or let's push back, pull back. And like I said, I was sitting in a room and I said our deal was relatively small for its time, but I think it's as complex as any deal is. So you'd have 10, 14, 15 lawyers. I remember the day at the end when you were signing. We signed documents for 10 hours. Must have been 10 hours or 8 hours. I mean, it was ridiculous. We signed till 10 o'clock at night. Lawyers under Walakana bringing their things. There's 10 hours of just signing. And I was like, what? You didn't even know what you were signing. You were signing. But anyway, for Winnie, just to answer your question, you have to find that right thing. You build something. I mean, I'm somebody I would like, yes, I had Acacia, I let it go. I had then built Mimosa. I knew I wanted it to reach as many people as possible. And I think I remember telling Josh in New York, I'd go to New York at least once a year. And I'd see the Dwayne Reed brand. I saw Dwayne Reed changing literally in front of my eyes and saying, one day I want a Dwayne Reed here. I was there 3 weeks ago. And again, you see Dwayne Reed again has morphed again into something else. And I think when I found the right people in David and Josh, not so much the PE fund, they just brought the PE money, but really it was their vision. Let go as soon as possible to realize your dream. But for you to be able to do that, you have to make sure that everything in your business, as small as it is run like a big business. So you take a salary and only use your salary. Don't make your business pay school fees and holidays and this, because when the PE guys come in, they will knock you down on those things, man. They'll say, just show me the audited accounts. That's all I want to see. So I knew that twice has happened to me. Make sure you get your accounts audited, be tax compliant, and if you're not, talk to the tax man and say, I'm going to be compliant. Answer your phone when it rings. Even if you owe $5 million, don't let it ring more than twice. In fact, the more you owe to that person, pick it up as quick as possible. That will get you to the next stage. So holding on to things, really, I think you find the right partner to take to the next level, because your vision will still be needed. And that I would truly believe. I'm still a small part of Goodlife, and they reach out to me once in a while. Josh is an amazing guy to still be there at that sort of executive level. I'm like, no way. I mean, it is difficult.
I don't have the wisdom that comes with your years, Chris.
So just keep the same sort of principles. I mean, holding on to things forward. I'm sitting at Metta, never been here. I'm like, wow, Kenya, I'm seeing all these young guys here chasing their dream and their vision in Africa. I feel proud being a Kenyan and being an African. I mean, really amazing. Yeah.
And just, I want to tie one thing back to what you were saying earlier about wanting to be a doctor and always being interested in helping people, because I think that's a lot of our connection. I wanted to be a doctor too, but realized that's not going to be the way for me to have impact. And that is, Chris, I think what you built was a pharmacy chain that was very much viewed at the top end. I think that Goodlife still today probably has a lot of that perception in the marketplace, but the reason why is that our plan, and I say our plan together, was always that if you don't have an aspirational brand, people aren't going to want to shop where you have your goods. And over time, we have been pushing down on drug prices, pushing down on our product prices, so that over the next couple of years, you will see this transformation happening in Goodlife as we start to put more and more product in the hands of the emerging consumer. Because they're the ones we really want to serve. They're the ones Chris always wanted to serve, figuring out how to get good quality medicine and advice into their hands. And we couldn't have done it without your original dream. And getting that done in some of the most challenging market conditions on planet Earth.
Amazing. At Metta, entrepreneurs meet. With IDEV, we get you there. And with EAVCA, we help you close those dotted lines. So the three of us are going great places. So, really nice, hearing your stories, so inspirational. And, if you are running down the beach, you're 25 years old, and the current Chris meets the 25-year-old Chris at that point in time, what would you tell him?
If you're going to go into business, have a thick skin, be honest, be resilient. If you believe in where you think you're going, really, it's up to you. There'll be a lot of naysayers along the way. You'll be scared, but just keep on it, and you will get there. It's up to you. There's no one else.
Oh, I get the same question. Of course, one of the questions would be, why can't you run like you did when you were 25? I guess the second would be, there's so many distractions. So many distractions in life, and I feel as though there are more and more and more. One of the things I love about East Africa is I think that it's a little bit easier to keep your eyes on the prize here. I'm reminded of this tale of a man who's standing in front of a dog, and he's holding a bone. He's waving the bone around, and the dog is just following the bone, tosses the bone, dog goes running. And I think when I was 25, I was the dog. I would run here, I'd run there. I saw this opportunity, I'd run for that one, I'd run for another. But if you hold a bone in front of, this is apropos here in Kenya, in front of a lion, and you start waving it around, and then you throw it, the lion still has its eyes right on you, right? The lion's not going to bother with the bone. And the hardest thing in life and in business is to just keep that focus on what is most important, because the time that you actually have to get that done, whether it's family, whether it's business, whether it's spirituality, is so much more limited than at age 25 when you feel pretty immortal running that near 6-minute mile down the beach versus today's 10-minute mile.
Good that it takes you 10 minutes today compared to 6, so you're not too badly off. So just to wrap up and then push back to the audience if you have any questions. Chris, Josh, I'd be happy to know what were your highest moments and what were your lowest moments as you started this journey and were charting uncharted waters.
One of my highest moments, I guess, is employing people. I mean, at Acacia, I ended up when I was leaving, we had a payroll of maybe 250 people. When I left, and these are all educated people. I mean, I'm talking about, you have 250 people with 150 graduates. Yeah. Then Mimosa, when I exited out in management, we were around 95, 96. Josh and his team have taken it close to 300. Again, very highly paid people. I mean, I shudder at the payrolls, and I'm like, whoa. I mean, it must be crazy, but I mean, that's what it is. So those are my high moments. In this new sort of food business I'm going into, which is 80 people, they didn't have one person that had gone past Form 4. Now we have 7 graduates and 3 masters. So to me, it's creating employment, and what will they do with that money when they go home or whatever. That to me is the biggest thing.
And
the lowest is no real lowest. I'm a tough guy.
There are more high points than I can count. I mean, that's why we're here. That's what we showed up for. Because there are more highs, there are more opportunities to find happiness and satisfaction, I think, in what we're doing. I certainly agree with Chris. Creating employment in East Africa is one of the most satisfying things you could ever do. the dignity that confers, whether it's someone who's doing cosmetics at Goodlife or a cook in the kitchen at Heaven, knowing that they can support their families or their education and nurture those dreams. I mean, that's what life's all about. I mean, what did the Buddha say? The way to find real happiness is through caring for others and not focusing on oneself. And I think there are so many opportunities, they come in spades here, to look outside of yourself and look to others at their needs and to provide opportunity in a way that cherishes human dignity. And that's just an amazing high that runs every day. Beside the incredible lows, the unbelievable challenges, the stress, the anxiety of not knowing how you're going to make payroll, not knowing why the supply hasn't come in, not knowing why systems are broken down. I mean, are they lows? I mean, are they depressing or are they challenges? I'm not sure exactly how I categorize them, but I look around this room and I'm sure everybody's here because this is what you signed up for. Almost all of you, I think, could very easily just jump on a plane, be somewhere relatively easy on planet Earth, get a job with the educational background that you've got, and go punch in every day and punch out. But instead, you're here, trying to make a difference and trying to have impact.
Amazing gentlemen making amazing impact in East Africa. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass it on to the audience. Any questions, comments?
Well, there were two challenging issues. One was the time that it would actually take to establish a brand and a brand name and what that would take in this marketplace in terms of spend. And Chris had already created a brand that was the brand that we wanted to assimilate, synthesize, and build on. And the second was what everybody in the pharmacy business knows about: location, location, location. And Chris had the locations.
Like I told you, Nai Frank would come to me. Yes, I'll be there with the Two Rivers Garden City. So I think as Josh and his team are going around, they're like, nah, Mimosa has it. But I mean, in business, like Josh said, location is, I would say, 90% of your success, depending on where you want to be. And like Josh said, in Kenya or Africa, people to change their habits takes a long, long time. So sometimes you're buying the future. You're buying 4 years of a lot of hard work and knocking on doors. And he trusted the locations, the brand, me, that I wouldn't go and try and mess it up. And, I mean, that's also a big thing, I guess. Yeah.
Great. So Rob asked, why not come in and set up a new entity, build out this platform? And, for Josh, it was really important working with someone like Chris, who'd built a brand, who'd built goodwill, who had a strong reputation in the market, and who had systems in place. He would have looked at all these pharmacies across East Africa, but Mimosa made sense. There's also something that comes out so strongly. It's the chemistry. It's, their vision, their mission. They were so aligned. And that's also a very important, aspect of business and, coming together as partners. Yeah, so Chris, interested to know, how would you build a brand? What are the 3 things that has taken you from, Mimosa to Goodlife?
Okay, first I'll say you're not inherently thinking about building a brand. A large part of it will be you. So it is your value system that you want to take forward. So if you're doing pharmacy or food. So for me in Acacia and Mimosa, especially I'm somebody who I find easy to delegate if I have the right people. So for me, being surrounded by the people I trust is 99% of my journey. So I think even when I met Josh, even I had very low, nearly zero staff attrition. No one ever left me in Acacia or Mimosa for somebody else. It just never happened. Unless they had got married and had to relocate. And so I remember them asked me, how do you do this? I said, well, if you go to all the pharmacies, very few people know I even know them. I might go for a function, give out my card. They said, oh, you're Mimosa. I thought Westgate was Yagna, Junction is Mweni, Karen is Francis, because that's what I did. I would never go behind the till. I'd always come in, try and be there once a week, twice a week, have a coffee at Dorman's, and just ask them, what challenges are you facing? What do you want me to do for you? So I would never be in their face. I said, this is your business. You have to run it. It's from here you're going to get paid. It's from here we're going to pay the salaries, the rent. all that stuff. And the little bit I have, I'm going to open another shop. So literally, I've always done it my whole life. I'm not a detailed person. I believe I trust people, so I need to have people around me that I trust. I mean, that is actually 100% of what I do. So I think if you're going to be there and you're going to build something, for me, those were the things. So I could focus on the other things, which is building, looking for sites. I travel quite a bit. I like traveling, so I see nice things out there. I come back here and want to implement them here. Like I said, when I met Josh and David, they had the same sort of vision, and getting the right partner, that you're not giving up your business to somebody because you're stressed or whatever it is. You're giving to somebody who has your vision and maybe is able to attract that P money that I for sure would not have been able to do. I mean, what they wrote and how they were able to get the $10 million or $50 million the first round, it was like quite amazing. Yeah.
I think there's something that's an overriding theme here. Trust is, one of the biggest currencies we can ever have. And if you're to build a good business, strong business, definitely you have to trust your partners and, be able to share the same vision. So letting things go, letting go of control in the business, that's a great fear for most entrepreneurs. How did you encounter and, deal with this issue?
If I can take the words out of Chris's mouth, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the offer that we made to Chris was that we would bring in a level of management and knowledge and systems knowledge that wasn't available in Kenya. And so I think that created a very convincing case for Chris to see that this is what would be required to take Goodlife Mimosa to the next level. And I think that's ultimately how you parted with it. And I know it wasn't easy. It was not easy for you.
I go for the board meeting, and you see what your new partner does, and you're that sort of seed at the beginning. And for me, when you're running a relatively medium-sized business in Kenya, to now dealing with opening a store close to nearly one every 3 weeks, that's the thing. I mean, that's the target for the management. Every 3 weeks, a new shop. And I sit at those meetings, I'm like, whoa. Because, I mean, it is, you don't want to be there. Unless you want it 100%.
And interestingly for me, this past year, I've actually come in to serve as interim CEO. So I was the founder. I had stepped away. I enjoyed doing the high-level stuff, but have really been operationally involved for a year. And it's such a different experience. And I certainly can empathize more than ever with what Chris went through and what those challenges are.
Interesting. A technical question. Valuation.
How did I value Mimosa? Yeah. Well, it was actually Catalyst and I putting our heads together and really figuring out with Chris at what price would he be willing to part with it, and what justification could we make based on what we believed we could do with his existing stores. I mean, that was what it came down to. And what did we think the value of that brand was? So it was really about time, value, money, go it alone versus take over Mimosa. What would those comparable costs be? So it was tricky. I remember sitting down with Chris at one of our earliest meetings, and my question to him was not, what do you think the multiple should be on your EBIT? It wasn't, what should be the multiple on your revenue? It was, Chris, what's it going to take? What's it going to take?
I would say I got a good deal, both in terms of money, involvement that I was left in the business, and the people who took the business. There were many things I could have stayed where I was, gotten on things, but even for me, I was like, I could see what I really want to do, and I knew I couldn't do it by myself. I mean, I just knew that. And in Kenya, going to a bank or any financial institution to borrow anything, I mean, what you have to get $1 million shillings is just too much hard work. So for me, I just thought I found the right person. I thought I got the right value. And like I said, I think we sealed it in New York over a drink.
Yeah.
I couldn't find my way back home, but anyway, I remember that.
So buyer beware, don't steal drinks, deals and drinks together. I mean, just, be cautious. Is there any other question? So if Josh didn't come along, Goodlife didn't come along, what would it have been for Mimosa? A lot of family businesses are facing challenges in terms of, handing down the business. So how would you have maneuvered,
Well, like I said, at the time Josh came, there were 2-3 other people who were looking at Mimosa for not me going out, just them looking at opportunity. I think I would have sort of plodded along over the next couple of years, got to maybe 14, been difficult. But somehow I always felt when I did meet Josh, he really wanted to do this thing. I mean, we didn't talk again for nearly 9 months. At 1.6 months, then you came back again. Mm-hmm. So I sort of felt somehow it'll come back. And I believe in karma. I believe you meet people for reasons. I'm spiritual in that way. So I wouldn't have held on for that long. No way. I wanted to move on. And I wanted somebody big with the same vision to, like I said, create what good life is. I mean, we had the World Bank people taking pictures this Saturday, I think. You know that? Yeah. So IFC have put some money in Good Life, and they sent some photographer from wherever it is, and I was there, I think at Westgate, and the guy says, I've been to 36 countries in Africa, I've been to your pharmacies, there's none I have seen like this, including South Africa. I'm from Boston, he actually lives in Boston. Even in Boston, we don't have pharmacies like this, because pharmacies in America are traditionally now the CVS's, the Walmarts, the Walgreens, so it's very impersonal. It's a supermarket with a pharmacy tucked to the back. So he just said, I mean, it's the World Bank looking at opportunities like this, investing in the good lives to then uplift everyone else, as opposed to giving people money. That's what he said, yeah.
So what would be your advice to current family-run businesses?
I would say clean up your shop, go to the people who can help you clean it up, make you more attractive, make sure everything is pretty much right tax-wise and this, and then look for that right partner. But I think some of these family businesses also become anchors on the family. Maybe father and mothers have their dreams, their kids don't want to do that business. And they've just been brought in and said, okay, here it is. So some of these things, do your own thing. If your kid feels early enough, yes, they want to be part of it, then still commercialize it, because maybe their children's children don't want to be part of that business. Always be ready for, and the world is changing very, very fast. And I think even within Goodlife, we are a primarily cash business. We don't do any insurance work. Yet. But I think when we go there, this business is going to explode. I mean, it'll go crazy. But you have to be ready for it.
Anyone with an itching question before we wrap up? Yeah, so future prospects, Josh?
I think that we've positioned Goodlife to be much more than a pharmacy, to be much more than just the chemist that has health and beauty. I actually think that Goodlife can revolutionize primary healthcare in East Africa. If you take a look at the movements in diagnostics, if you take a look at the fact that we decided to put consultation rooms in every single one of our pharmacies, even our smallest footprint, in order to provide opportunity for either face-to-face or telemedicine, allowing patients to access doctors that they otherwise wouldn't have the time or the resources to access. We are trying to build ourselves out as the channel that will decrease the overall cost of primary healthcare and provide the preventive healthcare that we know everyone needs, because the tsunami of chronic disease, of diabetes, of heart disease, of cancer, it's already here. It's already arrived. Those behaviors that drive those diseases arrived in Kenya decades ago, and now we're starting to see the results, but the health system is not actually set up to handle them. There aren't going to be enough doctors ever to handle what's coming, but in the future, we know that you're not going to need doctors in order to handle it. So my dream for Goodlife is that it goes to that next level, that it's not just recreating CVS and Walgreens and Boots, but rather that it is revolutionizing the delivery of this healthcare, putting it into the hands of the emerging consumer, figuring out how to help people feel good and look good, one patient at a time. And that's our motto. That's what we're out to do.
No, you said it all.
Okay.
There's so much in sync. Like Josh finishes Chris's sentences and Chris starts Josh's sentences, and it's a real marriage made in heaven. So Thank you so much, each and every one of you. We really, really appreciate your presence. Chris, Josh, it's an amazing business you've created. And East Africa, watch out for Goodlife. Here we come. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. This podcast is brought to you by IDEV International, Metta, and East Africa Venture Capital Association. Do look out for our next episode. This is Inside the C-Suite series.